Hi everyone, welcome back to the State of the Ark podcast. My name is Mike.
My name is Kaiser.
Today is our 9th episode. It's hard to keep a track of because I uploaded 6 yesterday, but this is 9.
Yes, but this is 9.
9th episode of our Xenogears story analysis. We left off in the D block prison at Kislev, and we were recruited by Rue Cohen to join the battling arena, and we were pushed along by Citan, of course. So we headed to C block to do our first round of bouts there.
That's right, and that's where we stopped.
That's where we stopped. So, first of all, I have to comment on this because somebody was asking me about it while we were playing, while I was playing for patrons, streaming for patrons.
Yeah.
They were like, "What do you feel about these? The way that like large cities are represented, like when you go kind of outward to the world map and you have like the little green arrows indicating
Yeah, and you can
points
kind
you
of
can
walk
go to."
around like the road parts.
I think it's awesome.
I think it's great. I think it's very cool. And my understanding is this would probably the general look of everything when you're in the overworld, like with the city, you know, when you're inside of Kislev, would look better if you were playing on a tube TV or something that wasn't like HD or anything like that. Everything would have meshed and would have looked a lot better. Mm-hmm. But I think it looks great still. I think it looks wonderful.
I think it's super cool. Because you have your like regular world map, like overworld map, right? Where you can either drive the Yggdrasil around or run around.
Yeah.
But then like the cities themselves almost have like a secondary, like a larger scale 2D image of like a bird's eye view of the city itself.
Just kind of mapped onto the
that you
terrain,
can kind of run around into different like enter and exit points.
It's really cool. I absolutely love it.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Totally sells the scale.
Yeah.
In this kind of abstract way that we're used to from these games at the time, and I just think it's awesome. There's actually a part coming up that I can't wait to get to. I'm not going to spoil it, but just again selling the scale of Kislev as a city.
Yes.
There's an event coming up, if not in the next episode, for sure the one after that, but I think it will be next episode. It's one of my favorite shots in the whole game. I freaking love it. But I really like it. I don't know how other people feel, but I think it's super cool.
It's cool, yeah.
So you kind of come around from D block over into C block. There's 2 guards that sort of block you.
Yeah, they won't let you. You're kind of like stuck to the roads more or less. You can't like just walk all over the city wherever you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is true of life. You can't
Which
just
is true of
walk
life.
over
It's
buildings.
cool. No, I like it. I actually really liked it. It felt like you were relatively constrained, but still super free to go wherever you wanted.
Yeah, except the guards are blocking you from leaving D or C block. You can't go into the civilian areas. You have to go straight to the battling arena, and that's it. So you go in there, and Rue comes out. This is I don't know how you felt about like the passage of time from the time we arrive or like Faye wakes up in D block
to when we're fighting.
To the point where he's fighting. It felt like a single day to me.
It did, yeah, but I guess that depends.
But Rue then says, several days ago, you were adamant about not piloting gears. Has something happened in the last few days to make you change your mind in such a large way? And this kind of brought to mind, because I did a video about abstractions in video games, probably like 2 or 3 years ago or something like that. And in particular, you know, it was kind of, the video was kind of centered on how the way like the JRPGs on this era sort of handled getting across the idea of traveling long distances.
Yeah. While having it actually be a very short distance.
Right. Yeah. It's actually, you know, you walk for like 5 minutes from one city to the next, or even less than that probably.
Well, in these old games, way less than that, yeah.
But because you're a giant little man running on this like small scale world, and you encounter enemies randomly as you're going, it just gets across the concept of this huge journey, but in this abstract way. And I really liked that about the games I grew up with. And the more games have trended towards realism, especially with the scale of their worlds and things like that, the smaller they've tended to feel to me. Because it's like, I think I used Skyrim as an example, right? Like you can walk like just gently holding the stick forward, walk from one side of Skyrim to the other in like 2.5 hours or something like that,
Okay.
which would be like.
How far could I go in 2.5 hours?
I actually figured it out. It would be like walking from Bountiful to Salt Lake.
Oh, okay. So just like maybe a 2 cities worth.
Yeah.
And
that's the entire continent of Skyrim, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, there's a whole extra layer of abstraction going on there. They have like a day-night cycle that would have passed many, many days in the time that you walk in that
minutes.
too.
Yeah.
So there's still abstraction going on.
Yes. Yeah.
But my point is that I for some reason, I hadn't thought that like many days had passed since he had last spoken with Rue in D Block, and then he and Citan met up. It felt like it happened in the course of like a few minutes. But this is actually days of time that have passed. There's an abstraction going on here to keep in mind, I guess, about how long Faye has been on his journey at this point. It might seem like it's been, I don't know, a few days ago that Lahan was destroyed, but it's probably been like a month or two or something like that at this point.
Yeah,
right?
at this point, yeah.
So I thought that was interesting, just something to take note of. Time is probably passing a little faster in the world than might seem.
Than you realize, yeah.
Yeah, or that you might realize. In the course of that conversation, he's like, yeah, I'm going to fight, explaining, his reasonings or whatever. And she goes on to say, you seem to have quite some confidence in fighting with gears. I'm looking forward to, and then like an exclamation mark and a question mark appears above her head, like, oops, excuse me. So like, she was going to say something, but she's like, oh, I probably shouldn't say that, right? So she's a little bit sketchy, this character. She has some ulterior motives, as everyone else surrounding Faye seems to have.
Yes,
Hammer
absolutely.
is the same way, because you go talk...
I know, he's funny. He's so, like, shifty about everything. He's just like, oh, there's a thing, but gotta go, bye, and he just runs out.
You're like, oh, never mind what I said, peace out.
Yeah, and I still don't know exactly what's up with him. But
yeah, it's almost like every character in the game, maybe aside from someone like Bart or like Margie, they all seem to have something they're not telling you.
Yes.
And they're all trying to use Faye somehow for their own ends. And, it just kind of takes me back to how frustrated Faye got back in the Pirates' hideout. Like when he exploded at Doc, and he's like, why wouldn't you guys leave me alone?
Yeah.
It keeps happening. It's like everyone is out to use Faye for some purpose.
Absolutely.
And it can get really tiring after a while. But Hammer said something similar. He's like, okay, now for the battling. Do your best, bro, for Hammer's future to... Forget it! Sorry, never mind. So everyone's trying to use Faye, man. Everyone's trying to use him.
Jeez, yeah.
But then...
By the way, he is possibly the worst mechanic ever. I mean, he sells us stuff.
He thinks he's
That's
good.
Fine. Oh, he thinks he's very good.
He thinks he's great.
He missed something very big on this checkup right before this most recent battle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they don't really go into details about it, and I suppose they don't need to. But, the fact that Hammer missed this is pretty... I mean, unless it's just like whoever, tinkered with it, just did like a really, really good job of hiding it or something.
Yeah, I suppose.
I don't know what the competency level in terms of mechanical engineering that character has.
Yeah,
but
and what all... how big a bomb device would be being put inside of a gear.
Yeah, and where you could hide it.
Seemed pretty big to me, but
Yeah. So once, I guess Faye isn't aware when he enters like which gear they're going to pair him with, right? So it's kind of a surprise when they show up, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's the Veltal.
It's a surprise, but it's also not a surprise.
It's also not a surprise. Well, we were privy to it because Sigmund, the Kaiser, was told to put Veltal and
he's
Faye
like, do whatever,
in D-Block
let's
by that mystery masked woman who was representing Graf, right?
Right.
She was the one who told him put them there. So we knew that. But for all he knew, like, he's never going to see that gear again. It's been seized by Kislev, who were the ones who had it to begin with, and it had been stolen by Gebler to be taken to
which is when the Lahan thing happened,
Right. So it's like they got it back. So it's like, oh, I'm never going to see that again. And then you walk in, and there it is. You've been paired. It's... I guess I don't expect Faye, based on him being this kind of like backwater, not necessarily the sharpest tool in the shed, to not be able to see okay, someone's setting this up for me.
Clearly.
Everyone around me is pushing me to do stuff, and now this is here. Wait a second.
It almost seems like he does put some pieces together, but what's he going to do about it?
Yeah, he can't.
Like, you're setting me up. I'm going to stay here in the prison forever with the collar on my neck. Like, no, he's got to use Veltal. It's weird. He even brings up that it's weird. But what can he do?
He can't do anything.
He has to just keep going. And Citan says the funniest stuff there. Not super funny, I guess, but I don't know. Funny, interesting. That he is like, I suppose they're just collecting data to use for data's sake. And the data will be very important data that is collected when it is collected. And like he just goes on about, your data. And Faye's like almost... not like, what data? What do you mean? They're like, there's data about things and how things work, and it's very useful. It could be very useful. He just is so evasive and like vague about what exactly.
I love that he says, as if he wasn't aware this was going to happen. Maybe he wasn't in this particular case, but at least upon seeing it, he would have probably realized what's going on.
Yeah,
he says, I don't think this is coincidental. I am simply assuming. But they probably intentionally furnished you with Veltal to collect some data. So Rue Cullen setting him up, and obviously it goes up the chain from there.
Yeah. Well, that's what Rue had mentioned. I'm excited to collect some data.
Shouldn't have said that, right? So let's talk about the Battling Arena minigame. What did you think of it?
It was interesting. I didn't know what was going on at first, but that's because the way that they presented the instructions was so funny. They're like, do you have any questions? And you're like, what does the X button do? What does Y button do? What does the zero circle button do? What does the square button do? And you gotta like go, and what does R and L do? And you gotta go and click to read. They didn't show you a map. They didn't just
tell you.
Yeah, instead you had to ask.
One window that gives you every button and what it does.
Now I don't know when they started doing that. It could be they just hadn't thought to do it yet. Or they couldn't for whatever other reason. But it was a weird way to receive instructions. Yeah. Like, what does X do? Well, X can do this or that. Okay, sweet. Anyways, then you go, and it's funny. It's funny.
Yeah, that's a pretty cumbersome way of doing it. I actually didn't even read the instructions because I've played the game before, so I know how to do it.
I wanted to make sure I knew what was going on.
No, but I'm glad that you went through it because I actually didn't remember.
Did you do the practice mode?
No.
Oh, I did. It's great. It's fun because you can just kind of, you do your settings. I didn't quite figure this out exactly, but it says frame rate, and then it has like, there's like some differences. You can adjust like different things within the game. Yeah, they took it pretty seriously as an actual like arcade fighter, which is funny because I don't know that you do this again in the game.
I know.
I'm pretty sure it's just this one moment, but they like did a pretty good job programming it and making it feel like Virtua Fighter or something like that.
Yeah. And it's surprising, and I was talking about this with the patrons too while I was playing. It was like this would have taken a considerable amount of time and like team members and resources to develop a like semi-functional fighting system
within their RPG game. They have that. Yeah,
and this,
crazy.
I guess, is just another thing you can add to the list of like, did this need to be there?
Right.
If it meant that they weren't going to have time to finish the game. Like
were he to do
it's
things
really
again,
cool though.
Would this still be there?
Like in an ideal world where Xenogears had an unlimited budget and time.
And more time,
I absolutely want this minigame to be preserved as is, because it's freaking awesome.
It's really cool. It was really, really fun.
Yeah.
Playing in an RPG and doing like action fighting kind of, I don't know, what would you call it? What type of...
Yeah, it's like a 3D fighter.
But an arcade fighter. Having those types of controls in an RPG game, even just for a moment, is like really cool. It's really, really cool.
And it speaks to kind of like the part of what we loved about Nier is breaking up the gameplay style from time to time to keep it from being getting old.
Yeah.
At the same time, and this is just a consideration, just something to think about. Again, I'm not saying that I would want this minigame removed because I don't like the minigame. I love the minigame.
It's cool. I loved it too.
But had they just had a standard turn-based gear battle for this part, how much time would they have saved to have then worked on things that didn't get finished?
It did feel very strange to me that we're in a gear, we're fighting another gear. they already developed a whole battle system and a whole way that gears fight each other.
Yeah.
But they decided to do a different thing
Yeah.
here. It felt weird. I loved it. It was cool, but it felt strange. It's like, why don't we do this every time we fight? Or
have some different battle system.
yeah, but it's like, well, no, you can't.
But
I'm like, I can dodge, I can block.
it's like really, it's pretty fleshed out. I mean, obviously,
very much
it's
so.
not, Tekken or Virtua Fighter or something, but
It's
they even built
primitive,
in,
yeah.
they even built in like a replay system.
Yes.
So,
where
like-
when you do a knockout, it's like they show you like
Yeah, you have to consider the fact
the
that
last 10 seconds.
from a development standpoint,
Yeah.
like it's saving video
That's-
as you're
that-
fighting
that's
to
true.
replay to you. That's a pretty complex.
Sure,
That's
yeah.
not like a code that in a day kind of system.
absolutely,
They
absolutely
worked
not.
on this for some
Yes.
time.
Yes. We don't know how long,
I have no idea how long.
but probably a while and probably several people.
Actual game developers might have better insight.
Sure.
On
well,
what
I'm sure
that would
something
take.
like this today could be programmed so easily. But if you were a programmer in the 90s,
Well, especially on
then
a-
I really want to hear
A young,
your
inexperienced team that had never worked with 3D before.
opinion. Exactly.
As
They're
Takashi
just out
talked
of
about.
university. Yeah.
It's like, okay. It's an ambitious choice. One of many
Yes.
that we've talked about and will continue to talk about that led to, unfortunately, the second half of the game not really being finished.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a thing I feel conflicted about. On one part, it's like it's so cool and so fun and such a nice change of pace, a nice way to keep the game feeling fresh as you're playing it. I would want to keep it for that reason. I understand the reason why they made the choice.
Yeah.
But when faced with the ultimate fact that this probably took away months of time and a considerable number of team members, should they have done it? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But it is fun, and I really like it.
Yeah, it was super fun. And it was pretty easy at the beginning. I was kind of nervous to do it because how is this thing going to control?
Yeah.
Like, what the heck? But at the beginning, it's pretty easy. But it does get difficult by the very end, There's a
it kinda
couple.
increases a little bit
Yeah.
in challenge or difficulty. But they're pretty quick. I mean, usually a fight
Yeah.
lasts about like 20 to 40 seconds tops.
Yeah, it's short.
But Leonardo is the pilot who you face first, and he was one of Rico's gang who you fought in the baptism. So he's pissed. He wants revenge on Faye for beating him up or whatever. I guess if you had fought past him. I don't remember which in the order.
Yeah, I
he
can't remember
was.
either, actually.
But if you get to rank A, which is beating everyone but Rico,
Then you beat him.
then
for
obviously you would have beat him.
sure. Yeah.
So Faye's gear is sabotaged by Leonardo, we learn, and it's sort of, there's an explosion, and he's injured in this, and he sort of, is taken back into D block and is being monitored there. And we get a scene with Leonardo and Heinrich in the sewers. And this is something that they do pretty regularly in the D block to earn money and things. The prisoners will go
That's
down into
right.
the sewers and clean them out and kill
Yeah.
rats and
Like Final Fantasy 12, like Vaughn at the very beginning.
exactly.
Get some cash money, kill some
Yeah,
low-level monsters.
Collect some. I think like the Ethos has like a headquarters of sorts in D Block where you can trade in like fangs and other parts you get from monsters and trade that for money. So that's how the D Block prisoners like earn money, or one of the ways that they do. And so Leonardo and Heinrich are down there, and he's admitting to him that he sabotaged Faye's gear.
Yeah.
And then they're worried that if Rico were to find out, they'd get in a lot of trouble. And
Huge
he's like,
trouble.
don't worry, like it's not
Like
gonna be a problem.
that was a little too overt. Like it was a
Yeah.
little too obvious. We did, yeah.
Yeah, like, Heinrich's worried. Leonardo's trying not to like say so out loud. But as they're down there, we get this first person view.
Yeah, red tinted. Yeah.
First person view of something down there hunting these guys down and killing
They
them.
call it a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it kills Henrik first, and he's just like, whoop that, and he just, it's his first person. And then the other, is it Leonardo? Mm-hmm. He's like, oh no, what's wrong? And then we see it first person again, but he goes, oh, what is this? It's a monster. And I'm looking it up in Japanese just to make sure that's what he said. It is the word monster, bakemono. So they're referring to a monster specifically. But what's weird about that is that Faye wakes up saying, I just had a weird dream. And that connected some interesting dots for me specifically. But he, that was his dream, but it actually happened, right? Mm-hmm. But Faye saw
I'm
it.
so glad you picked up on it, man. That's so cool. Because when you go back in the sewer later and you get the first-person view of the monster, it's green tinted. It's not red tinted.
Exactly. It does have red hair or a red cloak or something like that.
The monster you fight, Redrum, does have red.
Because they said beware
hair.
the red monster, something like that.
Yeah.
It was written in blood on the wall.
Yeah.
And Redrum has some red-ish, but the lens through which we see everything when we're seeing through that POV is green. It is not. It is not.
And
red.
it had many opportunities to surprise them or attack them as they're going through the sewers.
Yes, it was kind of running away from them.
It kind of avoids them the whole time.
Yeah.
Only when they use the bell and call it out does it actually attack.
Yes.
Which is interesting because that's very different from the behavior, the predatory behavior of the monster that attacked Heinrich.
Yes,
Leonardo.
Quite different. So they are not the same thing.
A different tinted.
There's another thing that happened too that led to a further connecting of dots for me that happens a little bit later, but it's when Citan is talking to the Emperor again.
Yes.
Which, does that happen during this
It does.
one?
We'll get to it.
Okay, good.
We'll get to
when
it.
we get to that, then I'm going to maybe connect some more dots for everybody.
Yeah, so that's cool. That's really cool. I think a lot of people are going to be impressed that you picked up on that. Leonardo and Heinrich get killed. Faye wakes up, like you're saying, I had this weird dream, and so I can kind of, okay, you got to go back and fight, and we're going to act separately for a little while here. You go back and you battle 2 more times, you come back and you sleep. You go back and you battle 2 more times, you come back and you sleep.
And you have to come back and sleep,
Yeah, it's at that point. So you've been battling here for like a couple days now. Again, passage of time, right?
Yeah.
And I really loved that when you finish with your bouts, it's nighttime when you
come back and everything's dark, and that was really cool.
It was really cool.
Liked that. I had to adjust the brightness on my screen a little. It was pretty dark, but
this is a good way of suggesting, okay, time is passing.
Yes, which since they hadn't done that before, that would lead you to further believe that previously had only been one day or a few hours. But because there is a night, not cycle, but a night version of D block that they didn't use before, which means was it ever night before? Which means it was all one day, but it clearly wasn't. That's just a thing that they didn't do.
So it's at this point that Rico comes down to talk to you, and he is suspicious that Faye is responsible for the murder of all of his gang. Because it's his gang that were targeted in the sewers. And Faye was obviously, Faye's gear was sabotaged by one of Rico's guys.
Yeah.
And so it's like, this looks a bit suspicious, don't you think? Yes. And Faye's like, what are you talking about? That wasn't me. Like, of course that wasn't me. Like, I'll do anything to prove to you. I'll come with you into the sewers to prove to you that, like, I wasn't the one. And Citan's even like, okay, so, like, this is why you think that. All right, doing his thing.
And Citan's like, I'll come too.
Yeah, I'll come along. So if I were Rico, though, and the guy who I suspected of killing my guys.
I'll come with you to prove it.
No, I think you're trying to kill me. That feels a little obvious.
This is how arrogant Rico is in his own abilities. Yes. He's like, this murderer wants to accompany me, but I can handle it.
I'm good. I'll kill him if he tries to kill me, right? So Rico, obviously, like you said, he feels confident in his abilities. But they all go down together to investigate the sewers. Now, I really like this dungeon. However, it is probably the first good example in the game of a problem that the game has, in that a lot of its dungeons look very samey, as in they're using the same assets, the same bridges, the same wall textures, the same doors, the same hallway construction over and over again, and without a mini-map. With only a compass. It can be very, very easy as you're sliding that camera around to become totally lost.
Absolutely.
And have no clue where you came from or where you've been. And it's going to get worse from this point.
Well, there is a place that you can go that has a map if you happen to go there first, lucky you. Otherwise, you'd be lost for a while before you see it. And I was really disappointed when I saw the map because I was like, this isn't that complicated. Why do I keep getting lost? It's like one thing with like 2 branches in one way, and then that's it. It's just like a little, like the letter K on a map. And I'm like, I keep getting lost
in
here.
the modern age, like the mini map has become such a staple of gaming. And it's
hard to
this
navigate
idea, it becomes hard to like read a traditional map in the way that you would in real life.
Exactly.
Because you always know where you are. Like you can always see an icon that represents you in the space.
Yeah.
And as you turn, the minimap will sometimes turn with you.
Yes,
and they've made it so easy to navigate maps in the modern age that, and I kind of have conflicting feelings on this because like one of the things I loved about like Final Fantasy 15, one of my favorite aspects of the game, was that some of its dungeons did not give you a minimap like that.
On purpose,
you had to learn the dungeon. You had to memorize its sort of like landmarks and things and be like, okay, that's there. And it returned me to a time back growing up on NES games and things where you had to memorize or take notes on the layout of the dungeon you were exploring.
Right.
And it was kind of part of what made it so much fun because it was challenging to just navigate or explore. It really was
challenging, yeah.
So there's an aspect of how Xenogears does this that I appreciate for that reason.
Yeah.
At the same time, I very much understand the frustration because there aren't any landmarks to really memorize because the assets in the dungeons are too samey.
They're too similar.
So it's really easy to get lost.
Yeah.
However, I really like this dungeon.
Well, you know what makes it even harder is the random encounters.
Yes.
Because you'll go into an encounter and then you'll come out of it disoriented.
Yes.
Not knowing which way was it left or right. Did the camera leave where it left off, or can I even remember where I left it off when the battle started?
Right.
That can be disorienting as well.
Yeah, totally. And so but the whole like premise, I guess the story premise of the dungeon is kind of, it's cool. It's interesting.
Cool. I like
it's fun.
it. I like
You're
it.
going around investigating these murder sites where this monster, allegedly killed all these people. And as you're going through it, you have to kind of, they're vague in the, it's not even, okay, so it's not even just the fact that you don't get a modern mini map to like help you orient. The characters don't say on the nose what you're supposed to do or how these are linked. They're kind of like making observations about it.
Yeah.
And they're in a very vague way, they're hinting to the player that might be important and this is why.
Yeah.
So like they'll say, oh, these like this slime is appearing around these sort of
pipes,
ducts or pipes or whatever where water is spilling into the main stream.
Right.
And they also mention like it doesn't seem like the monster is killing in the same area.
Yeah, it always goes into different places.
It goes into a different area. So the hint is if you find a murder site near one of those slime-ridden ducts, that's not where the monster will attack this time.
Yes.
So trying to like figure all that out and go, which one should I go to ultimately to draw out the monster to fight me? It's the one that doesn't have a murder site nearby.
Yeah.
But putting that together is not easy.
Yeah. So I actually made a little fun connection here that I believe was intentional.
Yeah.
But the red monster underground reminds me a little bit of It.
Oh, sure.
Some Stephen King stuff.
Yeah.
And specifically that
I don't mean to cut you off, by the way.
Go ahead.
Somebody said that Dan looks like that clown.
Oh my God.
I can't unsee that. I can't unsee it anymore.
Well, I've always been seeing Chucky. You remember the Chucky doll?
Chucky as well.
I've been seeing Chucky as Dan, and so I don't know that the It thing is worse. I guess it is. They're both bad.
They have the same hair. But anyways, go on.
Okay. Also, the fact that it doesn't kill in the same way or in the same place multiple times. So there's some Stephen King-ish kind of references.
And on top
here.
of that, the name of this boss is Redrum.
Exactly.
Which is from The Shining.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Murder spelled backwards.
Yes.
So definitely Stephen King influenced this little
So, feature. But yeah, I was kind of feeling it even before seeing the name. But I for some reason, I kept thinking, okay, not the same place twice. I don't know why, but in part it was the red. But that Ridrum doesn't look particularly slimy to me.
Yeah.
Did it look slimy to you?
No, not really.
It's like a skeleton-looking dude that looked quite dry, actually.
Yeah.
So why is this slime appearing all over?
Good question.
Okay, that's not important, really, but something I thought about.
Something to think about. Something to think about. Anyways, I like the dungeon. You end up going into kind of the sewage treatment plant, and you get the bell from there, and then you use that bell at the right spot, and you lure the boss out to fight.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what your experience was with fighting this boss, but this is one of, especially for this part of the game, one of the toughest fights you're going to fight.
It took a long time, for
in
sure.
the whole game.
Yeah.
A lot of people have expressed how cheap they feel the boss is,
Right.
how difficult the fight is. And this is just another example of many, many that I've had where I'm on either side of this debate, right?
Yeah.
RPGs of this kind, I would not ever really describe as being difficult or hard.
Right.
Because it's all about how you are prepared beforehand.
Yeah.
Not necessarily about like a skill that you have to develop. I have to get really good at dodging or recognizing patterns or attacking a spot or aiming and shooting. There's not like a skill you develop so much as it is having like a sound knowledge of how the combat works, how to protect yourself from things, and having the right equipment.
Understanding the system.
Understanding the abilities and what they do.
Yeah. A lot of it, if an RPG is hard, you just didn't grind enough. that's almost always the reason why.
That's one aspect of it too, is you just have to be at a level where you have the high enough defense level, or you earn the ability that allows you to protect against this, or gives you more attacks, increases speed. That's one aspect. The other is, what is your equipment setup? And do you even realize that you have an ability that protects you against fire?
Right.
Or that you can cast an ability like Citan has an ability, I think it's called Renki, where it's like he casts it, and on the next turn, his ether ability will be applied to all the party rather than just one. So you could cast Renki on round 1, and then on round 2, there's a Suisei, I think, ability that's a fire protection ability, and you can cast that on your whole party.
Right.
So it's like in 2 turns, your whole party is protected from fire ability. And
Very
there's
nice.
there's
Very
like an
convenient.
acid rain attack that the boss does, and you can diminish significantly the damage that does.
Right.
It's all about just understanding the mechanics.
Yes.
Right?
And things are named weird, which is part of why. If this was called like fire protectant, and but instead it's called a weird thing, which means you have to go into your item menu and read
it.
What things are,
the description
ahead of time. Which, if you're interested in the game, you'll do. If you aren't interested in learning about the game, then you don't do it. But it's not necessarily spoon-fed to you.
Yeah.
And so some people who may have had a difficult experience, but it's like, oh, but grinding's boring, or no, I don't want to have to read in the items menu like for forever because there's tons of things in this game. But it's like, well, but that's on you, because RPGs, you have to do that for RPGs. You just have to.
Yeah.
And one thing for me, just I always, anytime I can just level grind, I do. I always want to be well above where I feel like the game wants me to be.
Yeah.
Before I go and do anything. And that's just part of me. I don't like random encounters. I don't like having to redo things. I don't like it when things get difficult and I have to think really hard to strategically beat a boss. I just want to play the game. And so even though that means grinding, and it can be fun and interesting to grind sometimes, but I often will find a spot and just like stay there for like a way too long and get way too overpowered. And the game's still fun for me when I do that. It is still fun.
That's a valid way to play.
It's like, it's easy mode. I'm just playing it on easy mode, but that's fine. I'm here for the story.
Well, another advantage that a little bit of grinding can do is give you some room for failure. Like, it's not like you're just going to get wiped out in 2 turns because you didn't know, I need to cast this and this to get prepared.
Yes, it gives you, forgiveness.
Yeah, you have a little more HP,
leeway.
a little more resistance to magic, a little more defense.
Yeah.
So maybe it'll take 4 turns for the boss to kill you.
And who knows, maybe you can figure
in that
out.
time you experiment with a couple things and go, oh, okay, I figured it out, I know what to do.
Right.
Now, like in the midst of the fight, which I think is more fun generally, to
For me,
figure it
it
out
is.
in the fight
Yeah.
rather than, oh, I went to the fight and died, now I know what to do. I'll go back and redo that, and now I'll be prepared.
I avoid that at all
I
costs.
don't love that
Yeah, yeah.
all the time. I'm not
Some people do, though. There's like a
yeah.
Dark Souls kind of element to
Totally.
that's fun.
Totally.
And people get excited
like
about
Bravely
that.
Default can be very much that way. That
Oh, really?
series, the boss fights can be very, like there's a lot of layers to the mechanics, and each one has their own like specific sort of like each boss has their own little gimmick.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have no way of knowing that before stepping into that
Exactly.
fight.
Until you
have
see
to figure
them.
it out.
You don't know the tells until you realize it's a tell.
They do it, and it's like, you know what?
Yeah.
I got wiped out. I'm calm about it. I know what it does now. Now I'll go try this. There's a
Right.
whole element of fun that I do enjoy in that series of approaching things that way. Knowing I'll
Yeah.
probably die a couple times on this boss.
Right.
I'm okay. I'll figure it out and come back
Sure,
and try different party, like different combinations of classes, because they have different abilities. Let's look through and read all that and learn how the game
That
works.
makes sense for Bravely Default, generally speaking, just because of the Brave/default
Yeah.
system with
Right.
there, where it's like, oh, dang it, I did one thing when I should have done the other, right?
Right.
And then you just go back and then do it in the right order next time,
Right.
and then you...
There are other examples where I'd rather not do that. I'd rather like
Right.
find out the gimmick and be able to have the ability in fight to respond to that or to change tactics. And sometimes that requires being a little over leveled so that you have a little
Yeah,
cushion,
little leeway.
where you can take a few hits, a few hard hits, and be like, okay, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Let's change direction
Yes.
here. But anyways, I
Much
say
preferable.
all of this to be very aware on one hand that when I was 10 and I played Final Fantasy VII for the first time, I got very, very stuck on Hojo. The boss fight was very difficult
At
for
the end
me.
of Midgar, like
Yes,
early?
I
Okay.
couldn't beat the
Right,
game.
right.
I actually quit. I stopped there and replayed the whole game from the beginning about 3 months later because
Okay.
I could not figure out how to win that fight.
Right.
But on this one, I was older. I beat this boss on my first attempt the first time I played it.
Nice.
And I remember going online and everyone talking about how hard Redrum is. I was like,
Right.
that fight didn't seem that hard to me. I wonder why people struggled so bad with it. And I even went back and looked at my footage, the ones that I think that you're using
Yeah,
to
when
record.
to get footage, yeah.
And yeah, I beat it on my first attempt, and it didn't seem like I was ever really in that much danger of dying. So it's really just a matter of how advanced a player are you. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people who played Xenogears for the first time were probably the same age I was first playing Final Fantasy VII. They're kids. Maybe this is your first or second or third RPG. You don't really know it deeply
yeah,
yet.
exactly.
But I was in my 20s when I played Xenogears for the first time. I'd beaten many, many JRPGs before. And
Right.
I kind of understand how they work. And
Once you get how they work, it is
Easier.
There's very few cases where RPGs can really surprise you
yeah,
with their battle system,
Yeah.
right? And there's some ways that it can still be done, but generally speaking, it's like they're all pretty similar in that regard. Once you
Yeah.
figure it out,
yeah.
the game's not like
You're
gonna
fine.
be just super unfair to you.
Yeah.
You know, the way you thought as a kid, it's like no,
Yeah.
it's fair. You just got to get the system.
Yeah. In any case, I love this whole dungeon. It's a great boss. It's a great dungeon. It's got a nice dynamic between the characters. You got Rico there, who's and Faye, who are kind of building a rivalry
I like
with
them
each
together.
other.
Okay, so when we first unlock the door to get into the aqueducts, we're like, okay, now is everything ready? Are you guys ready? Do we need to do anything? And Rico just opens the door and walks right in, and we're just like, dang it. So we've got to go in after him. But
Yep.
like he that's his character, right? He just like goes and does things recklessly, kind of sometimes.
Yeah. But at the
Yeah.
end of this, after having fought the boss and killed it, Citan has a line where he says, "It had normal human-like intellect." No, it's better to say had left remaining. I think that's a clumsy way of writing it, that line, but I think what he means to say is that there was some human intellect still
there.
in this
So-
thing, right? And he says it's really rather sad.
Yes, he also says some other things before that. This I don't know that we find out more about this later, but this is a very strange kind of sequence of events here, because we're chilling with Rico. We're like, see, I told you I didn't do it. And he's like, where's Citan? And we're like, oh, he's out burying the thing we just killed, right?
Yep.
Like he had to
monster.
bury the monster. And I think I'm starting to distrust him like a lot more than I was early on, because my thinking is Citan is gone. because I had made a connection earlier on with the red tinted POV versus the green tinted POV, my thinking is that thing is not what was killing people, but it conveniently just happened to show up when we needed a convenient reason to get off of Rico's bad side, and then Citan just happens to disappear, and he's like hiding it, or he's doing something with the thing. In the meantime, afterwards, it's a little kind of suspicious. It actually makes me wonder if we even killed it, or if he put it there in the first place so that we could find it, and now he's got to go put it back somewhere else, wherever he got it. There's something weird, really weird going on with Citan.
Situation.
Now, I guess because I didn't realize, oh no, we're talking like the human-like intellect. At this part of the game, we start getting introduced to the demi-human concept. They actually start explaining it.
Yeah.
And this could just play into that, where it's like, oh, he was part human, but still part human is still a valuable thing to be, and so I'm going to go give this thing a proper burial. But it feels more to me like Citan's like, I've got to go cover some stuff up. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that worked, kind of thing.
Okay.
And yeah, so I'm starting to distrust him. I still want to trust him. I still feel like he's helping us in general. But this was the first thing he did where I'm starting to think like, I don't know, that was weird.
Well, with that line of thinking.
I think it's because a lot of people died.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Citan's covering up something that seems different than the stuff that he was doing before. Just seems different.
Keep that thought in mind, because I want to see how that applies to his conversation with the Emperor here in a second. But
okay.
Before they leave the sewers, Faye notices that Rico has a wound on his arm from the battle.
Ah, yes.
And so this has kind of set up a dynamic where the first time Rico and Faye fought, Faye didn't really care about fighting.
Yeah.
So it's like he wasn't really trying that hard, and Rico beat him up, and it's like, yeah, but I wasn't trying. Now It's like, next time we fight, Rico has a wound on his arm, so he has an excuse for why he's not at full power level. So we still haven't seen
I'm actually trying.
Yeah, we haven't seen these two people fight each other
like
at full power level,
yeah.
full engagement.
Yep.
It's kind of like delaying this and creating this rivalry that I think is really nice. But Rico's like, don't even think about taking it easy on me. Don't think about my well-being. Like, you, or else I'm going to kill you. Like, so you better be on top of your game. You better give me your full effort. And he's like, all right, I will.
Okay.
So that's kind of a nice moment. But then we cut to Citan having another report to the Emperor. And this sort of makes it more obvious that this is some kind of telepathy or something.
Yes, because it's happening now. It's happening in real time right now.
And he's obviously not there wherever the Emperor is.
I don't believe he's
right?
there.
He's reporting, but he's with Faye in D block.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So this is some kind of ethereal telepathy that they're doing back and forth. And there's something that the Emperor says that sort of alludes to this too. Like the Emperor isn't where, like the Emperor is somewhere else too in reality, right? So the Emperor says, has he awoken? And Citan says yes, twice, no, 3 times to be exact.
So I wanted to ask about this.
Yes.
I have a note here.
This is big.
Let's go
through all the times.
Let's go through the times.
Good. This is what I wanted to do.
This is the thing. This is where the dots were kind of more or less starting to connect a little bit better. First time was Lahan.
Yes.
Right. Boom. Nuclear explosion. I don't remember if he wakes up again until this recent one in the desert near Ave. In Ave.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen again, right?
Nope.
Because we were in the caves, but we didn't really go all out. We didn't blow up. We just kind of like did
and
a cool
Citan wasn't
move.
there anyway, so we wouldn't have been able to observe
He wouldn't have known. But we didn't nuclear bomb everything.
No. The second time was right before we got the D block in Ave Desert.
The second time.
Yes.
So that's 2. But he says
2.
Twice, no, 3 times.
3 times.
And if you... those were the 2 times were obvious. The third time, I don't know, and so they're showing that he kind of forgot that it happened because it wasn't as big of a thing, right? But it would have to be the fact that we really are the person that killed the people in the sewers, and that the red point of view that we had the dream of was us, which has big implications for what happens like earlier on in the game as well. I don't know if we need to go into that right now, but when he awakens, it's while Faye is asleep.
Yes.
And he is Faye, which I kind of understood because they keep bringing that up, like, oh, he this or that. But what I didn't know is that when he awakens, it's not referencing just like this super powerful like atomic bomb that he has, or it's not referencing just like the fact that he blacks out or anything like that, right? It's referencing something that he can technically be conscious of that he is physically doing, and that the other people who he's doing it to refer to him as a monster when it's happening, meaning he doesn't quite look the same, right? Which brings us to earlier times with, what's his name? Ramses.
Ramses.
Yeah, where he saw that red-haired Joker flash with us and being like, oh, I've seen these moves before and oh no. And it brings me to many other events, I suppose, but it's pretty clear at this point, I think it's very clear at this point, that the thing that awakens in us is us, but it's not like totally completely us, and it's not just a nuclear bomb. Like the way that things happen in Lahan, kind of, I feel like it was kind of a little bit misleading, probably on purpose.
Probably.
I'm thinking of it like a nuclear bomb, right? Because like if he awakens, everything blows up. But this shows me that that's not actually necessarily the case.
Yeah.
Because with Ave, that's kind of what I figured happened with Ave. Oh no, our friends are dying. We woke up. Boom, nuclear bomb.
Similar thing where like there was this radiation that was released. It was a huge explosion, right?
Yeah, and I've been, all the episodes up to now, I've been saying nuclear bomb to reference when he awakens. But this was not a nuclear bomb. And so when he awakens, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be something that blows up a city. It could be just a part of him. And this is interesting because he kills Leonardo, which is like he wants to get back for being wronged.
Yeah.
Like there's a part of him that feels, oh, this was wrong. And then this part of him is like going out and just getting revenge for Faye.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So they're not just passively connected. They're not just like, oh, there's another person inside of me. It's like they're intrinsically connected. They are very closely connected. In fact, you would even say they are the same person, but they don't appear as the same person and whatever. Okay.
Well, and then there's the fact that you have the red tint.
Yes, the red tint.
The red with the red.
With the red hair.
But also it was a very predatory action.
Oh, absolutely.
In the Leonardo sequence, whereas the green tinted was very evasive.
It was very evasive, yeah. Yeah. So
they were not acting with the same drive, I guess, internal drive, right? So, yeah, that's so cool that you picked up on that. That's awesome.
It's good stuff. It's very good stuff. But I'm realizing, I'm remembering now, in reference to what I said about Citan and how I feel like he put Redrum down there as a distraction on purpose, because we didn't talk about this. There's that little green old man dude monster that lives in the sewers. Gramps, yeah. And at first I'm like, oh, he's just going to turn into the monster. It'll be him, right? But Gramps says something when we talk to him. He says, my new neighbor.
Yeah, my new
says
neighbor.
Like my new neighbor, specifically like new. I think he says new, right? Mm-hmm. As in, like, this thing very recently showed up, right? And I don't know at this point whether he's referring to us or Redrum, but I believe he's referring to Redrum. But either way, it just recently happened to show up. As coincidences are kind of out the window now, especially given that we go to the battle arena and we have Veltal. It's like, that's not a coincidence, right? In this game and in all stories, there are no coincidences.
Right.
And that's just something to note. But Gramps is pretty funny. I was almost positive because he's green.
Yeah, that robot.
And then Redrum's not green, and that was confusing for me.
Yeah. It's definitely easy to, first of all, not make anything of the different tints and color. But one, to also maybe read too much into green, and Redrum's not green, and
I think after seeing Redrum and being like, hey, he's not green, he's also not slimy. I don't know what's going on there. But I think that they were just showing us that there's the red tint for our dream sequence, and then there's just a not red tint for the other stuff. It's just not red. It doesn't mean it is green, but it's not red. They're just showing a distinction.
Sure.
They're just separating them out for us.
Exactly right.
Because if they didn't do any tint, then we could still think that the red would have been the same thing. We're just, that was a past filter.
It would be harder to like
dream filter.
overtly differentiate.
Right.
Like this is definitely a different thing.
Yes.
Right.
And that made it obvious that it's different. Now it kind of got a little confusing because I don't know why they chose green, but it did show me that there was a distinction there.
Sure. So this this conversation goes on between Citan. So he says, yes, twice. Wait, now that I think about it, actually it's been 3 times.
Yeah, that's crazy.
May I ask you this, he goes on. Why would he be moved to a place like this? Was it the elders? The emperor says, nay, they're hoping for a more immediate disposal. I don't blame them. They have a deeply etched fear of him.
But why can't they just get rid of him?
Because Graf is involved, and
So-
Graf wants him.
I understand that, but they know where he is. I'm
But so did
operating
Graf.
under the assumption that Graf is a rogue agent, separate from the
The elders.
what are
the
they called?
Gazelle
The Gazelle.
Ministry. The Gazelle Ministry.
And that the Gazelle have immense power and can kind of do whatever they want. And that Graf, were Graf to openly go against the Gazelle in open defiance, that Graf would not win.
Well,
That's the way I see it. That's the way I'm getting.
We still have
right.
a lot more to learn about.
Yes, but Graf doesn't
Gazelle
seem like the
Ministry.
all-powerful, I can take down the...
Well, he's
the-
afraid of Miang, so like,
yes, and that's part of it.
there's some
So,
limits. To
he's
what
afraid of
he can
Miang.
do.
He's not in the power position there, and these elders of the Gazelle are speaking as though they're the orchestrators of everything.
Right, but remember, it was Graf's masked representative who moved Faye into D Block to begin with. So that was at the command of Graf.
I thought that was at the
even
command
put
of the Gazelle.
the Gazelle Ministry. So that woman said that she represented Graf specifically.
Oh,
And
okay.
she asked Faye to be moved to D Block and the Veltal to be moved to D Block.
Now, I love that all the bad guys of this game all have different motivations and they're
Yeah.
different. But it does get a little confusing as to
For
who's
sure.
doing what, which bad guy. It's
sure.
when they're all operating under the one great bad guy umbrella, it's easier to be like, oh, just bad guy, whatever. But which bad guy actually seems kind of important in this game.
Yes.
Because they're all quite different.
It's-
so I miss certain things like that.
It's hard to keep it all
Yeah.
in check. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's like 5 different bad guys. I'm like, oh my gosh, well, which one? I'm not used to thinking about this in games, so that's kind of cool, actually.
The Emperor is saying that the elders have a deeply etched fear of Faye, and they want to get rid of him. So Citan is saying, okay then, and the Emperor says, sorry, I'm going to put this on the screen so you're seeing the text itself. Citan is suggesting, well, if that's the case, then ... And the Emperor's response to that, again vague, yes, probably. So they know something we're not privy to at this moment. If they're going to take out Faye, that means something that they're referring to that they know that we don't know, right?
Yes.
And then Citan says, it would be hasty to dispose of him now. I do not think it is too late to wait until we find out his purpose. The Emperor says,
Wait, but this, when it says it would be hasty to dispose of him now, it should be too late. The he, his is not in quotes, right?
it's not in quotes this time.
Which means I don't know who they're talking
I
about.
think they're talking about Faye here.
Okay.
And again, this is my second playthrough. Maybe I'm missing something, but I'm pretty sure they're talking about Faye here. The normal Faye. The Emperor says, I do not think it is too late to wait until we find out his purpose.
I
then-
assumed that they knew his purpose, or that they had a purpose for him.
Well, we're
I suppose Graf does. These aren't Graf. I get it.
going to learn a lot more about Faye
Okay.
throughout I'm going to say this without spoiling anything. We're going to learn a lot more about Faye throughout the course of the game and what the purpose is they're referring to.
Okay.
We just don't know it yet. We're not privy to it. This is just a setup for some mystery behind Faye's purpose. The Emperor says, if that is your judgment, then so be it. So he's kind of leaving it up to him.
But that's important, though, because previously, with Citan's previous communication with the Emperor, it was the time of the gospel? And Emperor was just like, yes, it has begun. And it was very much, Citan is in a very subservient position that the Emperor dictates and Citan does, and that's really the extent of their relationship. With this one, we see that Citan actually can offer pushback, give his own suggestions, and Citan actually has a great deal of control with whatever the Emperor is trying to do. Like they're working together, it seems, but Citan, if Citan's like, I don't think we should do that, let's try this other thing, and the Emperor's like, okay, fine, do that. It's like Citan has a different role than I realized. Citan's a little more esteemed by the Emperor to do his own thing than it seemed initially, where Citan was doing nothing but the bidding of the Emperor.
I think Citan is still, based on the next line, which is, your will is my will, your majesty. You know,
yes.
I think he's still subservient and loyal, but this shows that the Emperor trusts his judgment.
That's it. Yeah. That's more it.
He's
not just like a slave that's gone to do something. He is.
The Emperor
autonomous
is trusting enough of Citan to let him have discretion in this matter, which is a very important matter.
Yes, it seems.
Right? So it's like the Emperor is still the ultimate authority, but Citan has shown enough loyalty and competency that where he's like, I'll just let you decide.
That's cool. Right. I mean, that's different from most video games, I guess.
So he says, well then, allow me to, and then the Emperor says, wait a moment. And this is where it suggests to me, as Citan is telepathically projecting his image into this little psychedelic plane, the Emperor is also doing that. Because it's like, wait a moment, I see. And then Citan's like, yes, like what's going on? Where
he just was told something.
Right, like, because he's not seeing where the Emperor is. Like, okay, yes, what's going on? The Emperor says, their judgment has been handed down. So he's just gotten a report about the Elder's judgment, which was the Gazelle ministry we saw from last episode. And Citan says, well, what is it then? And the Emperor says, a purge. So that's where that cuts away from that scene.
Which we had seen before, right? Where they were going to purge the
lambs.
Well,
particularly in Kislev.
In Kislev, yeah.
And then this is when we cut to the scene with the Gebler preparations for this purge that they're talking about. Elly is a commanding officer of those Gebler pilots, and they have a commanding officer there explaining what they're going to do. Their team is going to be in charge of escorting a battleship called the Hecht, as it goes in and targets something. But they're not being told what the target is.
Yes, and Elly's like, what am I supposed to do?
Why would we not be told what the target is? That makes no sense. We can't respond quickly to commands if we're not aware of the objective. And he's like, don't worry about it. You don't need to know this. All you have to do is protect the Hecht. That's it. Yeah. And she's like, oh, she's like really like tore up about this. And so as they're leaving, and those guys under her command are bantering back and forth as they do, like, I hate hysterical women and saying all these things. She's like, excuse me? Like,
believe. Like they're portraying Solaris as this place where they're all like above everyone and they're all technologically superior, but it's also like it seems like a really authoritarian or like a totalitarian kind of system where it's like, seems like a Nazi kind of thing,
Sure.
And
there's many allusions to
that. But
that.
the subordinates are allowed to just talk back to their commanding officer with no repercussions like that. It's incredible.
There's a couple layers to this. One is that these guys are the low-class citizens. They're like the third-class
They did mention that. One of them
from Solaris. So that
what's
means
his name?
I think it's Rank who says it.
Yeah, Rank. Yeah.
But they have. He mentions that they have their origins in the lambs.
Yes.
So they are people who were
descendants.
brought to Solaris, and they're descendants of the lambs.
Of them. Yeah.
So they share DNA with the lambs.
Yeah.
Whereas Elly is like a purebred, pure Solarian, right? So not only that, so they're of a little bit lower rank. They're a little bit more, what do you want to call it? Rude, I guess. Not as like formal, I guess. But on top of this, their brains have all been screwed over from taking drive.
Oh,
so
true.
These particular soldiers are a little screwy because they're addicted to drive and it's messed with them, and like they're kind of psycho dudes, right? Like, but because they went through the whole like Jugend program, which not like all Solarians do. It's just like the military. So there's a couple of levels to that as to why these guys are the way they are that I think makes sense. But as she's explaining to them that she's not going to follow this order if the order is to just murder all the lambs.
Kill them all, yeah.
Rank brings up, that doesn't make sense. Like we,
he's
third
like,
class
I get how
citizens, I like the line here. It's again a very as you know type of line.
Oh yes.
Rank says, even though we are called Solarians, we are the third class citizens or worker bees. Like, yes, everyone in the room knows that, Rank.
Elly. Yes, thank you.
Elly, and everyone else knows that. You're just telling us, the audience, that. But anyways, the point is that he explains, we have our origins in the lambs. If we were to object, that might make some amount of sense. But you shouldn't. That's weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
What? Your dad is a high-ranking, officer.
Yeah.
You're you come from a good family, you're a purebred Solarian, you're at the top of the food chain of the society. Why do you care about lambs? And so she's kind of just passes that off, whatever, I'm not gonna murder people, they're humans like us, right? So anyways, they're like, all right, whatever, but as long as, you don't make it harder for us, as long as we, complete our objective, whatever.
Right.
So nice little scene there. We're seeing Elly develop a little bit as a character.
Yeah.
In these scenes and the conflict she's having inside of herself. From that scene, we cut back to a few more rounds in the battling arena. Just more.
It's like the
fighting.
Semifinals.
Yeah, you go through a couple of different.
The one
three
that
different
I
fights
found
there.
The hardest before Spiel. What is before? What's his name? Sorry, Rico's.
Oh, Steer.
Is Steer.
Yeah.
Is the wheel one, the fire wheel thing? That thing was a pain in the butt.
Messing you up.
I think it was the first time I actually died because I was knocking them all out before that, and then all of a sudden that thing showed up. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, you get a few more fights, but then, and I was a little confused by this. Hammer makes a very, very strong suggestion to the player to save the game before leaving the battling arena. He's like, don't you think you should go to the memory block and save?
Usually they do it in a different way. It's funny that they had Hammer, they had an in-game character tell you to do that. That's pretty funny.
To use the memory block, which is like a diegetic piece of the world. Those memory blocks are not just save points. They're physically present. They use them in the game. And this will be a thing we'll probably talk about a lot later. But he's pointing to the save point, calling it the memory whatever block or whatever.
Sure.
Shouldn't you go record your progress in the memory block? Faye's like, all right. But usually they do that in games when you're coming to a boss or
where
something
you
could lose to
save,
and you need to save progress so that you don't lose it on progress.
I was
thinking we just had tons of cutscenes and we just had tons of
cutscenes,
and it's like you probably want to save here because you might die. Is usually what happens there. But you end up just fighting the cloaked mystery man who, whether you win or not in that fight, it goes the same way. You can't get a game over from that scene.
Right. Oh, that's true, actually. That's true.
So I don't understand.
It just takes a long time, but that doesn't matter.
I don't understand why Hammer or the developer is so. Maybe originally they were going to make it possible to game over against Mystery Man, and that ended up just not being the case. But when you're done with this whole scene, which we will go through now, you wake up next to a save point anyways. So it's like you can't game over in the scene. They give you a save right after the scene. Why is Hammer so insistent that you actually save here? It was a little weird.
Interesting.
But the scene with Mystery Man here is full of stuff to talk about.
Yep.
So you're going into the final round, to the championship round. It's going to be against Rico and his, he's the champion, right? So against his gear. And their Hammer is like, we should, really prepare the gear to make sure it's really ready to go.
Because Rico gets the best, the most expensive
parts,
things to put on his
gear.
Whereas ours is kind of lightweight and doesn't have all the stuff that we need.
Yeah, so it's like we should tune this up as much as we can if you're to have any chance to actually beat Rico's gear. And so Mystery Man shows up to teach Faye a lesson about relying too much on brute strength in this kind of thing. It's kind of a little bit of a tropey sort of anime.
Right, because anime is all about
student moment.
It's usually, not always, usually about like a young kid going to fight a bigger thing. And you can't just be brute strength. You got to be precise, and you got to like do your
strategy
and the right timing and all that. Yeah.
Know the weakness.
He says a funny thing though. Mystery Man says, in the opportune moment, you shove your fist
into the fissure
or
something like that.
Into his fissure. It was
another one of those tinkering with his junk.
Yes,
type of
it was
lines.
just like that. It was just like a tinkering with your junk line. It was great.
But so. He eventually reveals his name here. His name is Wiseman. Yeah. So Wiseman shows up and he's taunting or talking down or being a bit condescending to Faye about this whole situation. Yes. He ends up attacking him and Faye's like, "Whoa, you're for real? You're actually going to fight me?" He's like, "Yes, like I'm going to kill you if you don't fight back." So you fight him, and again, whether you win or lose this battle, it proceeds exactly the same. So it doesn't matter.
Good to know.
There is no change in what happens. At the end of that fight, Faye says, "That's the same technique as me. Like, how come? Like, how are you using the same fighting techniques that I use?"
Right.
So Mystery Man's hint or advice about how to fight Rico is a bit tropey in the what's the word for it? The type of anime that this is for
shonen.
Boys. Shonen.
Yeah.
In the shonen anime way, it's a little tropey. Mm-hmm. And I was a little disappointed that he's not actually giving practical advice that could be put to use in the actual fight against Steer. Like, it would have been cool if he gave you some technique or something that you then actually apply and use against Rico in the fight, and that allows you to break it. I would have rather seen that.
Yeah, me too.
It's a bit of a nitpick, but whatever.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Faye then asks him again, why does he have the same fighting style? And how he knows his name, because in the tournament in Ave, he had actually known his name. Yeah. So Wiseman then reveals that he was the one who brought Faye to Lahan 3 years ago.
Yeah.
If you hadn't picked up on that based on his clothing and haven't seen that in the cutscene in Lahan when it shows him
That's right, 'cause it's
there,
kind of optional, right?
If you hadn't seen that, this is where he reveals it up front. Like, I was the one who brought you there. I did this at your father's request. And that he and his father were students at the same academy, the same dojo, whatever you want to call it. They trained in the same art, the same martial art together, the same school. And he also reveals the names of Faye's parents. So Khan is his father.
Yes.
Karen is his mother.
And Faye, he's surprised to see that we don't know this stuff.
Yes.
He's like, well, I suppose in your mangled state you would have forgotten. But Wiseman, right?
Yeah.
He did not realize that we had amnesia, that we didn't remember. He had no idea. And I feel like once he learned that we had amnesia, he stops being so hard on us.
Yes.
He stops being so mean and so like just pushy, and just like, what's wrong with you? And he kind of becomes a little more approachable of a person.
Yeah, and willing to explain more.
Yes. Yeah. And he explains quite a bit here.
Yeah, a lot of things. So he reveals the names of his parents. He tells him that his mother died when he was really young. That she was very beautiful. He also reveals that Graf took Faye away at a young age. So Graf had took Faye away from his family. And Khan had been pursuing Graf to get Faye back. And that he recruited Wiseman. Khan recruited Wiseman to help him do that.
Right.
So Khan and Wiseman were both searching for Graf and Faye and working together to try to get Faye back. Yeah. And then it was 3 years ago, right before Wiseman brought him to Lahan Village, that Khan had confronted Graf that we saw in the cutscene, that of Graf and Red-Haired Warrior and Khan facing each other, right? So then we have this dialogue from Wiseman. He says, "You and Khan were wounded badly. I have no idea what happened between you two and Graf. By then, Graf had already gone. I don't know why, but probably he was driven away by Khan. So he's saying Khan, he's guessing Khan had fought Graf off.
And because they were both injured, right?
Yeah.
Because we saw that initial part of that cutscene and they were fine. And then he comes afterwards and they're both like injured.
Yeah. So from that point, Khan had decided to continue pursuing Graf, right? And he left Wiseman to care for Faye. So that's where Wiseman took Faye to Lahan village, presumably to hide him from Graf or something, while Khan continued pursuing Graf after that. And so then Faye asks why he did that. Why would Khan keep going after him? And Wiseman says, I don't even know. Just that he said it was not only for the sake of his son, but also for the sake of the world. That man had to be disposed of. He added that if something were to happen to him, I would have to take care of the rest. I have not heard or seen him since. I've not seen or heard from him since.
Yeah.
So Wiseman does not know where Khan is. Wiseman does not know if Khan is alive, but he knows that should he fail in stopping Graf, that it becomes Wiseman's responsibility to pursue Graf at that point.
And he also infers, because we tell him, we're like, oh, we know that Graf joker. He's like always getting in our business.
Yeah.
Then Wiseman's like, so you've met him personally and you remember it. That means that your father must not have been able to dispose of him.
Right.
So now, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what happens after this, but theoretically, Wiseman should now be helping us to kill Graf, if that's even what we're trying to do. I don't even know.
And so he leaves to go do that. He's like, I got to go find your dad, basically.
Yeah.
Like, I got to find out what happened here.
Right.
And then Citan steps up, again, having just kind of sat there in the background the whole time, observing, kind of like he did with Graf in the first place. Remember that scene where he's like standing there and he's just watching them talk to each other. He doesn't try to interrupt, doesn't try to interfere, doesn't try to do anything, just lets it happen. He kind of does the same thing here. And then he just steps forward. What a mysterious person.
Yeah.
Is this the second time you've met him? I never know what Citan already knows or not.
I know, and they've done a very good job of that.
It's
in the
so
game.
hard to read, like, is he genuinely surprised by this? Because he has been genuinely surprised once or twice, or at least it seems that way. But then other times, he knows exactly, and he's letting it happen because it's all part of the plan.
Right.
So, anyways.
But with this one, no, this can still work. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
We're good. I'm just thinking.
After that scene, you fight against Rico. You become the champ. His guys try to suggest you were cheating. There's no way you could have won.
Yeah, but Rico's like, hey, he won fair and square.
Stop embarrassing me further by doing that. Like, he won. Shut up. I have some things to do, and I'm leaving. And they're like, we'll come with you. And he's like, no, F off. I need to go do this by myself.
They show Rico's a very principled person.
Yes. Definitely. And so it's like, okay, like Hammer was going to try and step up and defend Faye, and those guys were going to, and he's like, they're both just like, stop. This is ridiculous. Faye wins, I forfeit, or not forfeit, but I lost, and I'm going to go do something else now. And then you get a scene with Rico where he goes up to his gear, and he's looking at it. And he says, Steer, this is the last. Hang in there with me. And then it kind of, like, the text sort of flashes on the screen. Get him myself. Now, this might have been kind of hard to, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because there's another scene with Dominia, the first element that we meet, and we're going to come back to that in a second. But I want to connect this to the scene after that, when you're in the champ's room, because you're the new champ now, right? And Rue Cohen is there explaining all of this. She says, after the finals league, during the group league bouts, his gear, being Rico's gear, went out of control. The out-of-control gear crashed into the Kaiser's box seat and was damaged. Nothing has been heard from the former champion Ricardo, and no one has seen him since the incident. So Rico, it seems, tried to assassinate the Kaiser.
Yeah.
As soon as he was no longer champion, he's like, I don't know, my responsibility to this is over. I'm going to go kill Kaiser Sigmund. Like the first thing he tries to do. And it was a failed attempt, and he took off. And then she also mentions...
If they catch him, they'll just put him back in D block.
Right. And he's been in D block for who knows how long. So she also mentions, just as an aside at the end, we were able to take some very good data.
Oh, of course.
So
yes.
that
Just
was...
like Citan was talking.
Right. They wanted to collect the data from the
they needed
Veltall.
that data. I don't really get that. But
So we'll come back to Rico and Faye in a second. But first we get another scene with the Gebler. And they're kind of walking through some hangars and things like that. And, you know, these are all the ships that are going to be used in this purge. And they're kind of talking about it. But then a new character, Dominia, shows up. And she is one of the current elements. So we had talked about in the previous episode that Citan and Sigurd and Ramses were part of the former elements.
Yeah, former elements.
Dominia is one of the current elements. So she walks in. She starts talking to Elly. It's cordial, it seems. You know, there's not really like much of a rivalry or anything like that between them. They're just talking like comrades, right? Not necessarily friends, but
right.
And so Elly's like, okay, what's the target? You know what it is, tell me, please. and Dominia's like, well, that's classified or whatever, but I don't see the harm in it.
I know. It's so funny how games do this.
It's this generator, or like what is
nuclear
the word
reactor?
For it?
It's a
it's
reactor.
Like a reactor or something in Kislev, and it's in the eastern sector. And she mentions that that reactor was left there by an ancient civilization. So this wasn't like Lamb technology. This is technology the Lambs inherited at some point by developing around it in Kislev, right? So she's basically saying when we attack that reactor, it's basically going to wipe out Kislev.
It'll just explode.
Leave any part of it that isn't destroyed uninhabitable for
100 years. Yeah, hundreds of years, yeah.
So they're going to just like completely take out Kislev.
Just wipe out the whole place.
And that this is an order from the Gazel ministry, that purge, right, of the Lambs. So Dominia also mentions a term called the gatekeeper. She says that the Lambs have the gatekeeper. This is also something that the Gazel ministry said in their dialogue. I'm going to kind of bring it back to that really quick. Let me just Control F to find gatekeeper. Okay. So one of the Gazel guys had said, although we do not know which route it flowed from, we're fortunate the gatekeeper was activated. So in the context of that conversation, we have no idea what the freak he means by that. But it was just a mention of this gatekeeper earlier. And Dominia is clarifying a little bit that Kislev has control of this. The original gate is controlled by those vulgar Lambs. This land barrier was made by our predecessors. The Lambs are trying to destroy the gate. Are you going to allow that? Later on, she says, they would pillage and loot our world without, or acting as if they owned it.
And that's probably true.
So whatever this gatekeeper is, they haven't specified it yet in the story, but whatever it is, it would allow, it seems, Lambs to get to Solaris.
Yeah, so there's a gate that is the passageway from
the passageway, because Solaris is protected by like an energy field, right?
But there must be a gate.
So there's a gate on the surface that allows them to get there. It's the gatekeeper is in Kislev. Gazel Ministry is aware of this.
Right.
They're going to purge Kislev because of it. They're like, we don't know how this gatekeeper got there, but in their conversation, it's fortunate that we don't know which flow it came from or something like that, right? But it's fortunate that was activated because now we know where it is and we know that Kislev has it. Purge time, right? Let's just wipe them out. And so that's what this entire operation is about. They're just going to go take out Kislev because they don't want Lambs getting into Solaris.
Yes.
So Elly responds to her by saying that Dominia was originally a land dweller herself. She's like, wait a minute, you came from the surface, didn't you?
Dominia is not happy. This is where she turns sour.
This is where she gets pissed.
Now she hates Elly.
Before, she was very matter-of-fact and just, cordial in the conversation. Yeah. As soon as Elly mentions, you're a surface dweller, don't you freaking say that to me.
Yes, yes.
Right? I was chosen by the commander. Don't look at me the same as those stupid lambs.
Yep.
Now, clearly she's been through the same brainwashing program that Sigurd mentioned earlier, right? Because he went through the same thing. He was taken, he was brainwashed, and then became an element.
Yeah, a high level, yeah.
So clearly Dominia has gone through the same process.
Yeah.
She's fully immersed in the brainwashed way of thinking. So anyways, interesting stuff. She's like, I'm going to show you pure Solarians, what I can do. I'm going to show you that I'm, loyal or that I belong here. And she walks away. And then that's when we come back to Rico in the champs room. But from there, she basically says, by the way, Kaiser Sigmund wants to talk to you.
Right, yeah.
So at some point, make your way to Central District and go talk to him. And then, of course, mentioned that Rico had tried to assassinate him, basically. So Citan basically informs Faye at that point, we can't stay here, but we can't leave without the Valtal. So we got to find a way to get that thing back.
Right.
And it's like, well, we do need to go talk to Kaiser Sigmund, so maybe an opportunity to get it back will arise in doing that. So you're allowed at this point to kind of explore. And you can either go to Central District.
You can go to the other,
or you can go to A block.
Yeah.
And kind of did you do that?
I did, and I thought that it was going to look quite different from the prison block. I assumed the prison block looks that way because it's where all the prisoners live, and it's just a gloomy kind of,
No, the whole city is...
But once I went to A block, and I was like, oh, everything's like this. This is just the
whole
place.
city is industrialized.
Yes,
and filthy.
Yes, and very dirty and very
covered in steam and pollutants
and it's everything's just gray and brown.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
that was fun. I like being there.
There's a couple of kind of interesting things that you can learn in A block. I think I'll save that for next episode. If I want to talk about any of that kind of stuff. But the important thing is going to Central District and meeting with the Kaiser.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple cool things you can do inside of here before you do that. If you go down the stairs to the right of the elevator, there's a family. They're kind of in a kitchen area, and there's a little girl and a mother and maybe a grandmother. I can't remember what the relation of the other woman is there. But they're kind of talking about, my dad, has been gone in the war for a long time. And the wife mentions, my husband, when is he coming back? There's a guy standing right outside the door who's pacing around, and he's like, oh, how do I tell the family? Why does this happen?
Is this where the chicken?
Yeah, the chickens are running around.
Okay, I did see
It's in the same hallway where these chickens are running around, and this woman's trying to collect the chickens. This guy's just sitting there how do I tell the family that their freaking dad's dead?
Yeah.
It's another example of just kind of this kind of recurring somber, depressing nature to this game, right?
Yes.
And the thing I love about the NPCs in this game is they feel almost more than any other game of this era that I can remember to have. They're not just there as conduits to direct you to the spot.
They're separate. You don't need them technically.
They have their own lives.
They just fill the world.
They're doing their own stuff.
Yeah,
they're concerned about their own problems. They question authority. They they're real human beings. It's really cool the way that all of them are written. I love the way NPCs are handled in this game. So some cool stuff like that. There's a little kind of mini game with like a crane that you have to avoid or dodge a bunch of stuff so you can use it to get a treasure chest over here.
Yes, I remember trying that. That was kind of difficult for me.
It's tough.
I was trying to jump on the things. Platforming in an RPG that's not built to be a platformer
the best
is very hard.
Thing.
Yeah, and I was falling left and right.
That's only going to get worse. So get ready for that. But there's a guy hiding back there behind the crates. Don't tell him I'm here.
I could see him. Yeah.
Please, just get away! Just don't let anyone know I'm here, right? Just funny dialogue and funny NPC stuff going on. There's another room you can go into where they have a model of a giant airplane or airship kind of a thing, And all the soldiers are like, "Ooh, this is the Goliath. This is like
yes.
our new."
They talk about the Goliath,
powerful weapon that we're going to use against Ave.
Right.
And this could end the war, kind of a thing. So a little bit of foreshadowing there on this Goliath machine. So that was pretty cool. And then you go up to the Kaiser's room, and as he just comes right out and says, "Hey, I'd like to ally with you if you're cool with that." And then Rico just drops in the room.
He just fell. We saw him earlier. We saw a little thing where he's like, "This looks pretty good. Oh, it's locked. Oh, let's do this." And he like climbs up some pipes, and it was just a short little cutscene.
Yep.
But it almost seemed, it showed Rico to be a little bit clumsy.
Yep.
A little bit like spur of the moment, like kind of spacey.
He doesn't have a plan.
He clearly does not have a plan.
But he's after Kaiser. He's still trying to assassinate him, I guess.
Yeah.
And he fell through the ceiling. And he's like, "Well, that didn't go right.
Yeah.
See ya."
Crap. And he tries to run away, and it's like, dude, you can't. He's done for.
Kaiser Sigmund's like, "He's not here with you, is he?" He's like, "Oh, no."
We're like, no.
No, we had no idea about this. And so you go running after him, and there's, it's kind of funny, but there's a door on the other side of the hallway that is originally Sigmund's wife's room.
Yes. I was curious as to what it was for a while, but that's...
And the guards are like...
And
this is kind of like we're talking about FF8.
This is the funniest thing.
Where it's like a kid thought of this kind of thing, right?
Yes.
"Hey, the Kaiser wants you."
Kaiser wants to see you.
"Oh, really? Okay, let's go."
And they just leave.
It's like, but wait, should we just leave this place totally unguarded? It's like, it doesn't matter. Only the Kaiser and his wife can actually go in there. And it's like some kind of DNA reader or something like that.
Then why are they there?
Why are they guarding
in the first place? I know.
Right? And also, how would they not know the description of the person who was the alleged assassinator or attempted assassination on Kaiser earlier?
I know. He's got such recognizable features.
He's like the only person who looks like Blanca in the whole world.
Blanca, exactly. He is straight up Blanca. I remember thinking that.
Anyways, a little silly, that scene, right? But it's fine.
Yeah.
The point is that the door has some kind of DNA reader, and Rico
and it opens
it.
Yes.
And goes inside.
Yes.
And the scene that we see here is really good.
Yeah, it's super interesting because it takes him to a different place. It shows his childhood, and he looked a little different as a
He was like a normal kid.
Yeah, he seemed to be.
Mm-hmm. And he sort of turned into a demi-human as he got older.
Yeah.
And the kids started to notice these differences in him.
Yeah, they stopped making fun of him.
And they were making fun of him, and he was hated, and his mother was sick, and she was trying to take care of him while like sheltering him from all this hate.
Yeah.
But she dies when he was young, and he's left totally alone in this world where everyone hates him. And from there, we don't know what happened to him, but he ended up in D Block.
Yeah.
And he's been living there as a demi-human ever since.
Right.
Now, he's like, why am I remembering this all now? Like, what brought this on? He doesn't even remember his own childhood, it seems. And he's confused by this, but like he's reminded of it while being in the Kaiser's wife's chambers.
Well, he mentions a smell. He says, there's a familiar scent to the room.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to learn more about this, obviously, later. I do want to, unfortunately, let people know playing this for the first time. Rico is a little bit of a Freya situation. And that is that Freya started on a really strong arc in Final Fantasy IX and kind of gets dropped. Rico kind of goes through a similar thing. It's like it starts really promising and interesting and good mysteries, but after a certain point, Rico is kind of forgotten in the story. So it's an unfortunate thing. I wish that they had, again, had more time to really finish the game properly, right? But just be aware of that so that you don't have this tremendous sense of disappointment when this doesn't go anywhere really. Right? Just want to let you all know that.
The implication, however, because he asks, he says, "Is my dad a demi-human?" to his mother, and his mother doesn't really answer
the question.
Just like, because I guess there's a genetic component, so why people become demi-humans makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And so, well, I don't know how this all works out, but somehow he's obviously related to the Kaiser.
Well, when you come out of the room, Kaiser
he's right
asks
there.
him to be
He's
arrested.
like, "How did you get in there?"
Right?
Yeah.
But then he's like, he sort of
he
himself goes, wait,
it couldn't
that
be.
couldn't be, right?
Yeah, he has a Citan moment.
Now, I want to show you a picture, the portrait of Kaiser Sigmund real quick, and just see if you notice anything. When you look at it more closely.
Is he a beast man?
Well, just look at his portrait and let me know if you see anything in it. Can we get closer on this? Do you notice anything?
He has some pointy ears.
He has extremely pointed ears.
So he is
Faye doesn't. Citan doesn't.
Okay.
No other humans have.
Right. But Rico does. I noticed that. Rico does.
He looks, in most ways here, totally normal.
Yes.
Except for his, like Legend of Zelda level pointed ears.
Yeah, very, very tall.
Huge pointed ears.
So he, before he became Kaiser, had a girlfriend.
Well, a wife.
Well, but the kid doesn't remember her, and they didn't live together.
Right, they didn't, but it was his wife.
Ah, okay. So I assumed that they were separate and that she was not supposed to be known.
When you go back into the Kaiser's room, there's like an attendant there, and when you speak with him, he mentions the Kaiser's wife disappeared or ran away. And that no one has been allowed to go in that room.
I get it.
The Kaiser's room.
That 2 guards are always guarding.
Yeah, since then. It's like he's kept all of her stuff, but like...
Interesting.
She disappeared or went away, and the Kaiser's always thought about her every day since then. So like she left at some point.
Well, that's very interesting.
The boy.
With the boy.
Yeah.
To raise him to be a poor little prisoner while she died. Poor.
Well, she died before.
I wonder what motivated her to do such a thing.
We'll hopefully find out, but who knows? I can't remember precisely how much deeper we get into this. I just remember that they don't go all the way through with this arc.
You brought up the orphan thing in Block D, though, or you brought up that he was an orphan and then went to Block D somehow.
They do have an orphanage. The Nissan does, not Ethos, but Nissan has an orphanage.
It's in D Block. Mm-hmm. Why are there a bunch of unaccompanied young little girls in the prisoner block?
In D Block?
Where the prisoners are.
Good question.
That are mostly male.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
I'm just wondering that. I remember thinking that. I didn't bring it up last time, but for some reason I was walking around and I was like, oh, this is where all the prisoners are. And I come in as a bunch of little girls. And I was like 5-year-old girls. Like,
it's a very sketchy thing.
I am very, I don't really want to ask questions, but why are they here? That is very strange.
That's a good thing to bring up.
Okay.
So after that, we basically, where I said to play up to was just after the cutscenes with Hammer.
Take him prisoner, basically.
So
where we could
Hammer
save.
has some cutscenes. Yeah, the first opportunity you get to save after that, which is Hammer says,
he's like, hey, I wanted to see you.
I found the well tall. And he's like, shut up. Why are you saying this out loud?
Dude. Hammer's so bad.
And he's like, what? I found it. It's like, be quiet. Like, stop saying this out loud, man. Like,
so we go to a place, I believe we go to a place that I had discovered previously when I was
it's A Block
going around.
Like a rooftop in A Block, I think.
Was it
where
the rooftop?
Where they go to discuss.
Okay. Afterwards. I thought it was inside someone's house, but we'll do that next time.
Well, because you can jump in through the chimney to do that.
Yes, which I had done before.
Oh, okay, so you had done that already.
But I thought that when we met, we went to that place, but I guess
not. Yeah.
I suppose not.
That's interesting. I guess you could have done that before. You could have gone into that house and talked to the doctor and whatever that's
yes, the
house.
Doctor, yeah.
Anyways, maybe we'll get into that next time. But that cutscene on top of that house, they start to make their preliminary plans.
Yes, because there's 2 ways. It's the Veltal stored underneath the battle arena, which is huge, by the way.
Yeah,
how does a city have that big of an open space battle arena? Crazy. Yeah. But underneath it is Veltal, and there's a train that goes there, and or there's like a tunnel from the
battle arena.
Yeah,
it's like, well, that's closed off after the assassination attempt on the Kaiser. They're not doing any battling right now, so we can't go that way. So I guess we'll have to go the supply route.
Train.
The supply train. The train, go the route of the supply train to get down into there. But they're like, how do we do that? We don't even know the times that the trains are going and all this stuff. It's like, well, we have time to figure this out.
Figure it out, yeah.
Like, we don't have to go now. Like, let's do some, let's gather some intelligence on this and figure it out. And that's where we left off for this week. So that's the end of this play session. Final thoughts. I really like the Kislev sequence of the game quite a lot.
I don't like the city as much as I liked Bledavik.
Yeah.
That was
Bledavik
cool.
is
That was
sweet
something
city.
else, man.
Yeah.
But it's technically a bigger city, and there is quite a bit to do there. It just doesn't feel as fun. On purpose, they designed it that way.
Right.
It's a glum. It's not a fun place to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good playtime.
There's definitely kind of a share. I don't know how shared it is. There's a sentiment online that Kislev is the area of the game where the pacing starts to get a little slow or rough or something. I don't feel that way.
Not at the moment.
Having played this,
assuming
this time.
Assuming we'll be done with it soon.
I thought it was great.
I don't know how much longer this carries on, but at the moment it's fine.
I think some of that probably comes from just how many times you go back and forth from the battling arena to sleep and then go back again and then just go to sleep again.
You should have been able to sleep at the arena. There should be some little a place.
I don't know.
To pass the time.
I think it's fun.
A green room.
Because the battles are very short. It's not like this takes a tremendous amount of time.
Yeah, I didn't mind it either.
I don't think it hurts the pacing of the game. Personally, I think there's a lot of huge reveals in this section of the game. New mysteries presented. New character with Rico that has an interesting dynamic with Faye. I think it's all really well done. I think the Kislev section of the game, basically everything up to the point we played so far, has been perfectly paced in my opinion.
And I ended up playing even a little further past this, and it gets better.
Yeah.
So
it just gets better.
I have no issues with this. Speaking of...
what's the next
stopping
point? Let's find that out right now. All right, so I've debated how to say this without spoiling anything, and this is what I've arrived at. Play up to a point where Faye seems to be on some kind of frigate in the middle of the ocean, having a conversation with a character that I'm not going to say. He seems to be out in the middle of the ocean with somebody. And the first save point you get after the conversation he has with her.
Cool. Done.
Okay? You're on this frigate thing out in the middle of the ocean. They have a long conversation and then they cut away from that scene. The first chance you get to save, that's the spot. That's the spot, okay? That's
good.
where you want us to stop for next episode. Thank you for watching. We appreciate everyone and your support of the channel. We hope that you're enjoying this as much as we're enjoying making it. And we will see you next week. Peace out.